Hey guys, it's Nick, and today I'm going to be talking about listening and communication. So, obviously, this is a very important thing in life because most of us are listening or communicating or doing both. So, what I'm going to do is pretty much just break it down into two columns, and I'll kind of expand a little bit more. As these videos normally go, I kind of jump a little bit all over the place, but typically that's as I think of things. So, and possibly after this video, I might do a Q&A just to kind of just open it up to the Instagram world if they have any additional questions after I finish this video. So what we're gonna do is I'll start with the listening aspect of it. So one of my biggest pet peeves is people that suck at listening, or people that proclaim themselves to be great listeners or managers or people in supervisor positions, and they don't listen and they don't really communicate all that well, but they're able to convince other people that they do. So, and if you're in that boat, I'm going to ask you to suspend disbelief that maybe you're not the best communicator and maybe you're not the best listener, and that you might learn something today. So, let's get started. So, listening. So, I've talked about this before, but re-summarize what you just heard. The reason why I like this is because two reasons. Is it, one, opens the dialogue for correction. So if someone just says something to you and you weren't totally sure what they said, or you kind of feel like you only got like a portion of it, then this kind of helps you get the opportunity, or gives the other person the opportunity to correct you and or explain more in detail. So the other part is it helps focus the speaker on the confusion and it saves time. So, admittedly, sometimes I've been in a conversation with somebody and they gave me a whole story, and it took like 5-10 minutes to get through it. And I maybe didn't hear everything or didn't quite understand everything. So in those cases, I might have been less inclined to ask more about it, even though I didn't totally understand it, because I didn't want to take another 10-15 minutes to hear the story again. So when you open it up for correction and you re-explain what you understood, it helps the speaker understand what you got confused about. So they're not going to give you the whole story again. You don't have to listen there and sit through it. They can then focus their attention to the areas that you didn't understand, which then help you get a whole complete picture. So, re-summarizing, like I said, it would kind of go something like this. Like someone would explain something to you, tell you about an idea or a problem they're going through, and then you would be like, okay, I think I understood that, so this is what I heard. Let me know if it's right. And then you go explain what you understood. Even if it's sloppy, that's fine. It's still an effort, and it's still, I think it places more confidence in the other person who's speaking, that you're actually making an effort to hear what they're saying. Too often I hear people, I see people like when they're trying to like listen or whatever, they hear someone tell a story. I could tell that they didn't hear it or understand it, but they just kind of said, oh, okay, I gotcha, and then left it at that. And it's like, dude, or ma'am, you didn't really understand anything. Hey, don't you have questions? Because I have questions. There's stuff I didn't understand, so I highly doubt that you understood everything. So, and this is the kind of thing where it's people have a different perspective on things, so you might not hear it or understand it in the way that they do. And, I've always talked about, like, I'm a big believer in there's always a way to convey your feelings, what you think, and your ideas, and you may not always get them across right away. And another thing to consider is you might not be sharing the ideas with the right person. If I'm a mathematician, I may not want to share my math ideas with someone that's in the creative field because they're maybe not much of a logical thinker. That's just an example, but that might be one scenario or case that might happen. So again, focusing the speaker on the confusion. Again, this is just to save time. This is just so you're not reiterating old information that everyone seems to understand. So, and also when you re-summarize, it also, like if you're in a meeting or a group of people, it also gives other people in the room an opportunity to then better understand what they said. And if you take the lead on asking about the parts that you were confused about, it might inspire other people in the room to feel more comfortable to ask too. Because a lot of people don't like ask, I think, because, for me, speaking for myself too, I know I didn't want to appear stupid like in the past, so I might like just not ask the question because I don't want to seem like an idiot. But when I was in high school, one of my teachers told me that, if you have a question in the class, you could probably assume at least 5 other people had that same question, whether, they're willing to admit it or not, or whether they would say anything afterwards or not. So I always think it's worth asking questions that you don't understand, just because it's more than likely that at least one other person in that room has the same question. So ask away. Anyways, moving on, another tip is assume you'll learn one new thing. So this is a tip from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Again, I know some people don't like them, but again, I can separate ideas from people. I'm not going to use his views on trans people to totally discredit his experience and knowledge of psychology, sociology, philosophy, religion, and history. I think I said history already, but if I didn't, it's there now, or there twice. So again, assume you'll learn one thing that you didn't know before. This kind of opens your mind up a little bit more that, you know, you're not just listening like an arrogant person. You think you know everything. Ooh, I hear this again. Like, just keep your mind open. You don't know what you hear. Sometimes, too, it's like, I haven't always, like, had something or had information or advice or a quote framed a certain way that I couldn't understand. But once someone phrased it a certain way, it then became easier for me to understand it. So just keep that in mind. Sometimes it takes the right phrasing or the right combination of words for you to kind of like get something to click. So be open-minded to that. So moving on, nonverbal tactics for listening. So a lot of times, like people on the spectrum, or people that are introverted, or people just uncomfortable in social situations in general, I think we all understand the feeling of not wanting to make eye contact and not wanting to do all those typical things. So I'm here to tell you don't have to do those things, or there's a ways around them. So pretty much the goal of when you're the nonverbal listening skills, the goal is just to indicate that you're listening and hearing what the other person is saying. So obviously if you're doing these things I mentioned before, like re-summarizing and focusing the speaker on the confusion, and then assuming you'll learn one new thing, like that'll help. That'll definitely show. Like I said, just by asking about the story or asking about the problem or whatever it is the person's saying to you, that looks better than someone who just says, okay, I got it, and then that's it. So that instills more confidence already in the other person who's speaking. But for nonverbal tactics, like I know for eye contact with me, especially when I'm having like it's sensory overload day, like I really can't make eye contact. Like it's like, oh, I don't know how to explain it. It's like overwhelming. Like the person's face is just distracting me, and I can't like hear everything. Like it's like, I don't know, it's weird. So what I'll do is when I'm listening is I'll pick like 2 or 3 items in the meeting room, or maybe just one item. Let's say there's a pen on the table. I'll just look at the pen while the person's speaking, and I'll just like nod my head, like okay, all right, that makes sense. Gotcha. Okay. I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I re-summarize that real quick to make sure I understand? So that would be a point where I would then re-summarize what they're saying, and then give the opportunity for the other person to correct me or reframe what they said so the rest of the room or myself could understand better. So, you know, another thing too for like, just like looking around the room is when you're talking to people, a tip I got was, if you get a group of people, say like 5 people, we would randomize you look at this person for a few seconds, nod your head, okay. Look at this person, all right. And you look at this person and so on, and you would do that. And another tip I got is if you're speaking and you're in a public room or whatever, you're speaking to like a decent sized group of people, like 10 or more, try to find the person that actually seems like they're listening and use that person as your confidence builder as you feel like maybe you're not interesting or maybe you're not catching the people's attention, because they're the ones that are going to kind of help you feel a little bit more better that, you know, you're not just wasting your time standing in front of the room, saying what you're saying, etc. So just keep that in mind. Like I said, when you're listening, when I said like looking at one thing at a table, I might look up a few times, like look the person in the face, and then you start nodding. You can look at the forehead. That's another tip. You can look at someone's forehead, and it looks like you're looking at the face. So you sit there listening. Okay, that makes sense. Right. So that's one way you can do that without having to totally rely on making eye contact and not actually making eye contact. So that's another tip for that. I'm trying to think if I have any other tips on nonverbal communication. Oh, another thing is, I put this up here. Stay off your damn phone when you're listening to your friends, especially if they're talking about something serious, and your coworkers. Your coworkers need to stay off the damn phone when you're listening, right? Unless you're a note taker, there's no goddamn reason you need to be on your phone. There's no goddamn reason you need to be on your laptop. All right, we're here to learn. We're here to, you know, figure things out. We're here to problem solve whatever we're doing. We're here to brainstorm, collaborate, innovate, whatever you want to think of. I can't think of more rhymes, so that's it. So just again, just make sure you stay off your phone when you're listening to people, because that's really rude. Like, I cannot stand when I'm telling someone something important and they're like, yeah, that's cool. Oh, I got you. Yeah. Like, I hate that. to me, I already know the person's not listening. I'll just stop talking. And or while they're sitting on their phone, I'll just cross my arms and just sit there and stare. And I'll wait till they're done. I'll just tune in and just. I know it seems obnoxious, but what's more obnoxious? When I'm actually trying to tell you something important and you're on your phone not listening, or me waiting for you to listen, right? So don't feel bad about that. If you're gonna be annoying, sit there, just watch the person on their phone when they're doing their shit. That's fine. I wouldn't be hard on yourself about that. They are the one that's being rude. So, what was I gonna say? So the other thing too is another thing about that with people who don't listen well. There are people in my life that I feel should be good listeners. They are my friends. They're fun to hang out with. But when it comes to having problems I need to talk to them about, or an idea I want to share with them, they're not the best people. So I just stop talking to them about that stuff. And I've talked about that too, where I feel sometimes I used to expect all my friends to be the right person to talk about anything with. So let me rephrase that. That might have been confusing. So I have certain friends for certain problems or certain situations or certain areas of expertise that I talk to. So if I have a friend who's good at finances or good at their financial experience, I'm going to talk about them if I'm having money problems. If I know somebody's good at marketing or branding or design, I'm going to talk to those people about my marketing and design problems. If I know, last example, they say 3 is good. If I know someone that is really good with science or medical experience or psychology, I'm obviously going to talk to that person about that kind of related stuff. So just keep in mind, your friends aren't always going to be the answer to all your problems. So just kind of figure out what friends or what family members or what coworkers are good to talk to about certain things, because it'd be very rare for someone to be able to fit that bill for everything, all your problems you have. And that's what I think some relationships run into problems, is they set this expectation for each other that they need to be the answer to all their problems, but it's that's unrealistic. It's we all have skills, and some people get jealous when you go talk to someone else about a problem, and it's look, it's nothing personal, but they know what they're talking about when it comes to this, and you don't. And I don't expect you to know about it because it's not your area of expertise. But if I have a problem that I need to vent to, just in general, I just need to get something off my chest, or I have a family member that's pissing me off, I need to talk about, sure, we'll talk about it. You're good for all that other stuff. You're the one I have fun with. You're the one that, we talk our ideas out. We talk about all the random crazy shit that we believe that if we shared with anyone else, they would probably be like, what the fuck is wrong with you guys? That's what your relationship and your couples are for, is being able to talk about that stuff without judgment, And if there's a problem, they should be there for you. And if you need to take time to think about stuff, that's cool. But just keep in mind, you don't need to be the answer to everyone's problem. Don't get jealous. If your significant other goes to someone else to solve a problem. And there might have been times where that significant other might have gone to you for that problem and you weren't able to solve it. So just keep that in mind. It's just they just kind of, I think they're doing the right thing. They're being smart. They're going to the person who has the expertise of that knowledge. So anyways, I'm going to move on from this. So I think that'll do it for all the nonverbal tactics. Oh yeah, another thing is, when you are listening to someone, do not think of a response. If you are thinking of a response while someone else is talking, you're not listening. I'll tell you this now. If you're thinking, you're not listening 100%. So what I usually would suggest is, it might seem crazy, and then you just got to kind of trust your mind and trust yourself, but if you just go all in on listening to what the person says and don't worry about your response, you'll more naturally come up with a response if you just focus all on listening. And then when they're done speaking, then you'll kind of feel your answers come to you, or the questions that might come up from what they just said will come more naturally. Because generally, I've talked about it, if I don't have an answer, if I don't have a response, I know I then have a question, which then becomes, what question am I trying to figure out? What don't I understand about what they just said? And so on. And obviously these are things I ask internally, but, it's still happening. So, again, if you're thinking, you're not listening, just listen. When someone's speaking, don't worry about what you're going to say. Just listen to everything they have to say, because as you think while they're speaking, you're going to miss sections or parts and bits and pieces of what they're saying, which means you're not going to be able to give the best answer, ask the best questions when they're done speaking. So just keep that in mind. And even if they talk for a long time, like I said, it's okay to interrupt people. Just be clear, hey, can I interrupt you for a second? I just want to make sure I understand this first part before we move on. Because again, you don't want to keep going while someone's speaking, or let somebody keep speaking and then you're already confused the first 5 minutes. You know what I mean? Interrupt them. Be like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. Can I just reaffirm that I understand what you're saying here. It was just fine. They're not being rude. Again, this shows that you're actually making an effort to listen, which will make the other person feel better, which means in the future they'll feel more confident to come to you and speak with you about these kinds of things. So, again, it's experiencing. Same with communication. Anyways, so moving on to communication. So, these are some things I think that are nice to know that I learned later in life, and I didn't know before, and I used to stress myself out about. So I think kind of knowing these things might help you not stress out as much. So the first thing is, I don't know is okay. Again, I kind of mentioned it before, but if someone says something and you don't get it, that's cool. I don't know is the preferred answer, honestly. They would rather you actually make an effort to understand what they're saying than just to say, oh, I gotcha, okay, cool. And then they'll find out a few days later they didn't know what they're talking about, or if they bring it up a few days later and you don't know what they're talking about, then that kind of shows that you weren't listening. So, again, just say, I don't know. That's fine. Not having an answer right now is okay. So what I mean by that is, if someone asks you a question, or if you're at work and you got time to figure something out, it's okay to say, I don't know, let me do some research, I'll get back to you by this date, or I'll get back to you in a couple days, or I'll get back to you on Wednesday, or whatever you need to tell them, or how long you think you need to figure out the answer. The other thing is, I'm going to move down to this one because it's related. Ask questions to clarify a question. So if you don't understand the question, again, ask a question. That'll help you understand their questions better. Because sometimes somebody will ask you a question, you're not totally clear. I kind of talked about like being on the spectrum. The way my brain kind of works is, I don't want to say like I know everything, but I do know a lot of different shit. I have like a very well-rounded area of subjects that I've studied. So when someone asks me a question that's not so simple to answer sometimes, so the way I explain it, or the analogy I use, is when someone asks me a question, my brain is like a Google search, and rather than getting like one page of results, I'm getting like hundreds of pages of results, and I'm like, dude, you gotta be more specific. I don't know what you're talking about, or what you want to know, or what specific kind of answer you're looking for. So then that's what the opportunity would be for you to answer that question. And then lastly is take your time to think before you speak. That's okay. So believe it or not, you have about 30 seconds that you can take to think before you answer someone's question in a meeting, for example. And the other benefit of it too is when it looks like you're thinking, or if you just kind of sit and pause, like take a thinking pose or whatever yours is, it makes you seem more intriguing. It's kind of a body language trick. It's not like you may not even be thinking about anything. It may just be to just appear like you're more interesting. It sounds silly, but people go for it. But yeah, you can take your time to think. And when I say 30 seconds, think about how long that is. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. I'm not going to do all 30. That would be ridiculous. So yeah, just remember, you have time to think before you speak. And if someone asks you a question in a meeting, don't stress yourself out by trying to give them an answer right away. You can think about that. And then lastly, on this communication section, if you don't know the answer, but you know someone else in the room might, just ask that person or call that person out. Be like, you know what, I'm not really sure about that, but maybe so-and-so knows about this. What do you think? And then that kind of opens the discussion to them. And, sometimes people with our expertise in something, but the people that run the meeting don't usually give them a chance to speak up, or maybe they aren't comfortable or confident in themselves yet. But if you keep going to them and showing that they know about this certain area of knowledge, eventually they're going to become the go-to person for that stuff, and the rest of the room's going to learn that they know what they're talking about. And, that's something I used to do, is I called it like positioning my teammates, and they didn't know it. I did a lot of stuff that my teammates didn't realize I was doing, behind the scenes without them knowing. But, I was quietly a meeting facilitator in that way. So it was just like, if I didn't know something, I'm like, oh, I think so-and-so knows about this data, or I think she has some data on this, and I would call that person out so they could then get the floor, and then over a span of a couple weeks, it then became a go-to person for those kind of questions and answers. So, something to keep in mind. See if there's anything else. Nope, I think that's it. So, just want to say, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it was useful. And if you guys have any additional questions that you want me to, or areas on this topic you want me to go more in detail on, I might be able to do it in the comments, or maybe I'll just make another video where I just answer all the questions if I get a lot. So, hope this was a good one. Enjoy your day. Take care.